Om Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I think most of you were not here last week when we started chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga of royal secret, royal knowledge. So the chapter contains 34 verses, just running over, recapping. Royal meaning something beyond our normal, it's privileged, it's far beyond the worldly normal. The idea of royal, whether today's society is different, very mundane. But royal, kingly, princely, queenly, that status of privilege, that highest of highest knowledge, seems like a secret, misconstrued it as a secret, because in the past, sometimes the knowledge was kept by those who knew it. And the real reason is, if you're a seeker of knowledge, of truth, you'll seek it out and find out. You'll explore. You won't be passive. You will go and seek out what you need to know. Once you understand your existence on this planet is nothing but to realize the self. But for those who don't seek it, it's a secret. It's not known. That's all. Nobody can stop you having this knowledge. It's your birthright and your existence to be on this planet is to find it, use it, get to that truth. That's all. Nothing more. So royal knowledge, royal secret. There's, so the secret, the best of knowledges is Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya. So the best of the best is not known. So it's known to the person who qualifies themselves, those who are ready to receive it. You make yourself in a position where you block out your distractions to receive it, because knowledge and truth is never given, it's only taken. So you've got to be ready in that predicament to receive it, to want it. And when you want it, it's said that a guru, a teacher, a scripture, whatever, you're put in that position where you find it. But you've got to want it. So you've got to be qualified. Otherwise, there's it won't be put to you. So you've got to put in that effort. So it's said, you don't just give it to anybody too with a teacher. It's wasted just giving it to anybody. So a secret which is not known. The Bhagavad Gita is talking about the self. In any scripture, in truth, is going to be talking about the truth, the self, the Atman, the Brahman, the Godhead. It may have many stories around it to make it for humans to understand, if more devotional. It may have cryptic messages or elaboration. It may be sung in terms of bhajans, but like we have the chant, it's there to elevate us. But it's sandwiched, the Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between two words, which all the philosophy is sandwiched between dharma and mama. Mama in the 18th chapter, dharma in the first verse, dharma kshetra kurukshetra, and mama in the 18th chapter. My essential nature, that's what you've got to get to. And my essential nature is just about Atman, Brahman, just to get to that truth, nothing else. So everything in between that you're learning in philosophy, you've got to practice to get to that essential nature of yours. Dharma, I think we spoke about it last week. Dharma is just the essence. So the essence of the sun is heat. The essence of sugar is sweetness. The essence of you as an individual is your Atman, Brahman, truth. And you've got to go beyond your body, mind, intellect, attachments. You've got to use it to get rid of it. Refine your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts in this world just to be objective, to refine it, fulfill it, and get onto that truth. Nothing more. So every human being is a composite of spirit and matter. There's no God somewhere else. You're part of that. It's just masked. Your Godhead is just masked by your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, your body, mind, and intellect. So you've got to use that. You've got to use the thorn to take out of the thought. You've got to use what you've got, your tools, to get to that truth, unmask it. Thou art that. So no truth, no God, no Atman Brahman can change the way you look at it. It's neutral, it's catalyst. You've got to change the way or the direction of your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. So it's like completely revolutionizing your own thinking. I remember one student used to come to me, we just do a one-on-one session. He sort of said, does it mean that I've got to rewire everything that I'm thinking? It's coming from a very materialistic background. I said, yes, that's what it means. You've got to rewire everything you think is okay to actually start thinking and reflecting on what it's supposed to be. And keep going through that through your study and reflection in the morning hours. Later on, it's all blurry. It becomes rajasic, tamasic. Right now, we're in rajasic time. So you've got to really execute those hours of the morning to actually understand how you're going to do your day. Let it percolate through your day. So through the disciplines of karma, what's sandwiched between dharma and mama is your karma, bhakti, jnana yoga, those disciplines. Get out of the rituals. The only ritual is like your worship in your activity, in your yajna, your sacrifice. Your worship in taking in knowledge. Your worship is in identification. As a jnani, we look at it that way. So it's not just sitting in the temple, mosque, church, etc., and singing, or it's, if you're doing that sort of thing, you've got to have some constructive discussion to lead you out of your quagmire, to lead you out of the rituals the mechanical way of living. Rituals can punctuate your life, but it's not about that. It's not refinement per se. It's just to remind you. So, first topic, the self pervades the world, verses 1 to 10. And we'd covered the first verse last week. First verse was talking about one doesn't cavil. Anybody remember, to those who do not cavil, who does not belittle himself, it does not slight the knowledge. So what's the word cavil? More or less telling me. Anybody who was here last week in the first verse? To you who does not cavil, verily I shall declare the greatest of secrets. So what's an important prerequisite of learning N1? In order to learn anything, what are the things that you've got to keep in mind?
To be humble, open-minded, and not be envious.
Humble. So that's good. So humble, open-minded. All those. Anything more you can add? Babita. That's good.
You need to be questioning and be, as Nisha said, open-minded. Yes, questioning.
So when you learn anything, you need to question. You need to have a humility, humbleness in your questioning. So sometimes people come through, we've gone through chapter 7, the different ways people may approach. They might question for their own curiosity only. They might question to make the person who's offering small and show that they know more. There's no humility there. They might question to belittle that knowledge. So if you truly want to gain something of the knowledge, you've got to have that humility in your questioning. And certainly you question. The whole knowledge is based upon that. Humble humility. Anybody, anything else? So what are the different things? Did you have something? Yes.
I mean, it's what Nishi said, Vinaya, Vidya and Vinaya. They go hand in hand.
So knowledge and humility, 2 petals to that wheel. Vidya, Vinaya. A little bit of humility, you take a bit of knowledge. Gain a bit of knowledge, you add a bit more humility to get a bit more knowledge. Keeps going and keeps refining you.
Sorry, Parulji, can I also add, how about being completely honest as well with yourself, with the information, and just being able to, acknowledge what is being said and how it applies to you?
That's the point, humility with yourself, honesty. Of course, that's the point, that's your reflection. So you're asking yourself a question, then you reflect on what does this mean to me? You take it back. Tim, did I see you had something? Thanks, Winnie. Okay. So acknowledge your ignorance, and then you have humility. Then you can take your want, that mumukshapa, that desire to want. So you don't cavil, carp. You don't scoff at the knowledge. You have a respect for it. You make yourself qualified, one who wants that knowledge. Doesn't scoff, not a hypocrite, not slanderous, has respect for the knowledge. In that, the Guru will appear. If you don't have respect for the knowledge, if you're arrogant, envious, as such, you get the stress and strain of life. You can't absorb it. You're full of agitation. So the seeker qualifies himself, herself, puts themselves in a position, keeps humility, has the respect. Then you're available. Tim, you had mentioned a definition of carping last week, which was useful. Okay.
Just to follow up on Poonam's point about honesty, it's very easy to detach yourself from a text. You know, you read the text at 8 o'clock in the morning in these classes, and do you actually apply it to your life? And perhaps that's also a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is integrating that knowledge into your own specific position and life. And I think just that point by Poonam is quite useful and important. It's so easy to separate knowledge into an abstraction and keep it quite separate from your own life.
Yes. It's easy to be objective towards others' faults. It's difficult to be objective and practical to one's own. So yes, that is an important part. So he says, to you who does not cavil, verily I shall declare the greatest secret, knowledge together with wisdom. In fact, we were discussing last week, nobody can give you wisdom, however much they declare it. But the environment can be made conducive for you to receive knowledge. And you, because it's conducive, put in the efforts. And because of the structure of the way the knowledge is offered, you know, there's a structure in the way Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita is offered, gives you a consistent way of getting the information from the verse. Deliberately, we have it chanted. It gives us an intonation, an emotional value, elevates us. Then we have the verse, gives us that translation. Then we have the commentary. So slowly, over time, we hear the same things. It gets digested into us. But don't bank on just coming to a class. You really have to do your own study and reflection in the morning. But that consistency of purpose with that shraddha, you get an inbuilt reflection, which then becomes your knowledge. You draw it out of yourself. So you have to put in the efforts in the early hours of the morning, that sattvic time, Brahma Muhurta, to make it wisdom and then apply it, so it becomes wisdom. Nobody can give it you, which having known, you shall be free from evil. So once you make this knowledge your own, you'll be free from agitations. Once it's wisdom, not when it's knowledge. As Tim was saying, you can extract the knowledge and be very proficient know it, can speak this knowledge, doesn't mean to say you have this knowledge. It's yours. You've got to cultivate that within you. Your consistency of purpose, making your life constantly conducive, avoiding the distractions, constantly conducive to this knowledge, this predicament. It takes effort. Hence why I'm often saying to you, come visit Academy with me. You put yourself in a conducive environment, devoid of distractions of the mundane, and there with the dynamism of the schedule, and you're constantly thinking on the higher values, discussing with like-minded people, so less of a distraction. You get your time to study, reflect, you get in a routine, you get that solidarity of your purpose of what you're supposed to be doing. So unless you've got that environment, it's very difficult to maintain that consistency of purpose, to allow that digestion. There's a constant distraction of thoughts onto what somebody else is doing, what you don't like, and your opinions of it. Constant rubbish hitting your retina. You look at the screens of different things, or the news, or the gossip, or whatever. It's a waste of time. No connect, no love and devotion, no jnana going on. So not to cavil. In fact, we can just chant the verse, read the verse, and we'll move to 2. So,
Shri Bhagavan idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anushuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajnatva mokshyase shubhat.
Tim, if you could just read that verse.
The Blessed Lord said, "To you who does not cavil, verily, I shall declare the greatest secret, knowledge together with wisdom, which having known, you shall be free from evil."
So jnanam to vijnanam, knowledge to wisdom. So a Brahmana has that respect for this knowledge, a reverence, which as you embark on, reflect on, all your agitations are dissolved. So you can't afford to slight this knowledge. You can, but it won't do you any good. Any knowledge of this type, have a respect for it, a reverence, a humility. Don't just question without thinking. Let's do verse 2. We covered this in last class. Anybody wants to know more?
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Shushukam Kartumavyayam.
Renu, if you could read the verse.
The royal knowledge, the royal secret, the supreme purifier is this: directly realizable, righteous, very easy to practice, imperishable.
So the royal knowledge, the royal secret. So it's a supreme purifier. So a supreme purifier, because something pure has nothing other in it. pure gold, 24 karat, it's got nothing in it. 9 karat gold, what's it got in it? It's got all these other things in it. So it's full of impurities. In fact, I remember once when I was a little child and I had a little ring and I was in India, and one of my cousins said, took it off me. No, I don't need such things. And saying, oh, it's 9 karat gold. That's not gold. So when you purify yourself, there's nothing but Atman, Brahman in your mind. No agitation, no stress, no otherness. Pure. Otherness means what? No, separate from your fellow human beings and all creatures, your world. You think twice. What you're about to do, will it harm? You think about it. The universe is all part and parcel of you, me. We're one and the same. So the royal knowledge, the royal secret, the supreme purifier. So when you identify with that self within, it's the same self in all. Your mind becomes, without agitation, they dissolve as you begin on this practice. This practice, this supreme knowledge, allows you that direct perception to realize, if you put in the efforts, sufficient, commensurate to what you've got to do. So it can be gained by yourself. You're there to get that. So when you think about all the knowledges that we know right now, they're conditioned knowledges. So when we ask ourselves, are we conscious? The thing, if I was to ask you, are you conscious? Your question you might put back to me or whoever's asking is what, Vidya? You just said it.
Of what?
Of what? Which puts forward, there's got to be something of an object, a being that you're conscious of. And once you have something, an object or being, it becomes conditioned consciousness. It's not pure consciousness. It's conditioned. And depending on what that object or being is, invariably what happens to us, if the object or being is agitated or not pure, it reflects back into us and we're agitated or not, feeling, our thoughts and perceptions are such. Unless we gain that perspective of focusing on something pure, we gain that objective, we gain that elbow room to focus on pure consciousness, something which is not conditioned by our perception. It's not possible really in reality, but we use that practice to focus within ourselves on something which is bigger than ourselves. It's a practice. We maneuver, it displaces with thoughts, perceptions, emotions, which are not necessary to us. So that pure consciousness, that which supports all knowledges of Vyayam, is beyond conditioned consciousness. Yes, Babita.
Sorry, Parulji, could you please just repeat the conditioned consciousness again?
So, when say, for example, how could we explain it? We don't have a diagram. We don't have one of those pen boards to write it. We should figure that. So say, for example, you have a trough of water, yes? And a ray of light hits that water, yeah? And then there's a reflection of that water, which you see, yes? If that water's moving, what you see is moving water, agitated water, yeah? If it's still, what you see is still, but you see the reflection, yes? Yeah, is that okay? Okay. So say when the pure consciousness hits the thoughts, yeah? Okay, so far? What we see is a reflection of those thoughts. So if your mind's agitated, you'd see agitated thoughts, yeah? So pure consciousness has no otherness in it, but conditioned consciousness, when we say, ask ourselves, are you conscious? So if I ask you, are you conscious? What's your first question to me? What's she talking about? Of what? Maybe? Does that make sense to you? Of what? Yeah, I'm asking you, are you conscious? You're going, of what? Tell me of what? Because we are in relation to our thoughts and some object, yeah? So we always base our knowledges on something in the world. But this supreme knowledge is not based upon anything in the world. All we have is indicators. Supreme knowledge, infinite knowledge, universal love. But that's not it. Those are conditioned thoughts, values, pointers, which help us get there. So pure consciousness has no otherness. Conditioned consciousness that we perceive, perceptions, emotions, thoughts, our world, something of, some object. It's got to be there. Because we perceive something because of something. Is it okay? Does it make better sense, or is it? Don't worry. It's okay if it's not okay.
Much clearer there. Thank you.
So we just start there. So once we get into the practice of thinking of pure consciousness or Atman Brahman, something at the back of our mind, that's shruddha, in our perceptions, emotions, thoughts, through our karma, bhakti, jnana. Once we get in the practice of everything is being related back to that, the practice becomes easier and easier to support ourselves getting away from that otherness, but more of a unity. So it's that purifier. It's realizable, so you can get it. Very easy to practice. It's not very easy to practice when you're not in practice, but chapter 9 is presuming you've gone through your karma bhakti jnana. You're on that path. And in that sense, the more you practice, like anything, if you play any sport or if you are engaged in any exercise, in the beginning, it's very tough. But once you get in the swing of it, it becomes easier and easier, and you're able, and it becomes pleasure to do it. Anything contrary is not okay. So it supports you. Pure consciousness supports you in whatever your activities are when you are focused on that, because it displaces all the negative values, keeps you on track. Let's read it.
The verse describes the knowledge of self as royal, meaning the highest, noblest of all knowledges. The absolute knowledge which illumines all other knowledges. The self within is the supreme knowing principle supporting all knowledges. The self signifies the pure awareness which makes you aware of objects and beings. The pure consciousness which makes you conscious of your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, your waking, dream, and deep sleep states. The pure knowledge which illumines both the realms of your knowledge and ignorance. The knowing principle with which you know what you know and what you do not know. It stands out supreme as the source, controller, king of all knowledges.
Okay, so even what you don't know, it backs. So, okay, let's carry on.
The verse also refers to this knowledge as a great secret. That means self is profound and unknown to everyone. You know your body, mind, and intellect, but you know not yourself. Self eludes all perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, hence considered the greatest secret.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge of self completely purifies the stain of vasanas, desires acquired through past actions. Human beings develop desires through their selfish and egocentric activities. These desires stain the self. Like oxide stains a brass pot, the knowledge of self acts like brass polish. It removes the stain of desires and restores the supreme glory of the self. The verse rightly calls it the supreme purifier.
Has anybody tried to polish a brass pot? What does it require? Any brass or copper when it's got stained?
I
Lots
use
of effort.
tamarind.
You
I
use
use
tamarind.
tamarind
Okay,
lamps.
so use your intellect to make it easier. Dissolves it. Tamarind's like very lemon acidic. But what do you have to do in order to really scrub it, scrub it, scrub it? And if you leave it, again, after a while, it becomes oxidized. So you've got to keep on top of it. You've got to keep cleaning it up to remove that oxide, that stain, what corrodes it. So we've got to keep doing that with our vasanas. Let's go to read a bit more. Sorry, Nishi, or did somebody have something? Did you have something?
Sorry, I was just going to say it requires a lot of effort.
Yes, that's the point. Okay.
Your conscience directs you towards the self within. It guides you on the righteous path until you realize the self. With the support of your conscience, your efforts take to the spiritual path easily. In contrast, material and sensual activities have to work against the constraints of your own conscience. The mundane path remains ever riddled with worry and anxiety, stress and strain. The verse encourages the participant to use his conscience to follow the easier path of righteousness.
So when you hear that little voice within you, heed it, try and heed it. The more you heed it, the more you become aware of things. So you've got to be true to yourself. Somebody, Poonam mentioned honesty. You've got to be true to yourself wherever you're at. It doesn't matter. It can be like the hare and the tortoise. Don't look at the hare. Just be the tortoise, but keep your consistency of purpose and keep that shraddha of heeding your own conscience. And don't worry about other people's doings or what they're doing. Keep checking yourself. It becomes easier, more available. It makes more sense in the whole. starts to dissolve, erode that stain, this vastness, that worry and anxiety. Let's read the next.
However, you cannot delegate your efforts in the spiritual path to another. You will have to pursue it all by yourself until you reach the self. A guru can only help you vicariously. You will have to experience the ultimate truth on your own. The experience of self then becomes permanent, eternal, everlasting. You never again fall back to mortality.
So what's the key thought there? Babita.
You have to do all the work yourself.
Yeah. So never put it on anybody else. In fact, never put your work on anybody else. You can have a cooperative, you all must work together. That's yajna. But you got to do your part. Never try to escape your part. Because it doesn't do anybody harm but yourself. So you've got to put in the efforts. If there's anything to be done, work to be done, karma to be done, try and grab it first. Don't let somebody else take it. You be the first one to take it. In the society today, it's like, oh, let somebody else do it. I'm too busy. But recognize that you're the benefactor. If you're the benefactor, you're more light. If you're more light, you're able to do more. It's like that. Just don't ever shirk your obligations, especially when obligation is really just to get to the self. Last part. This power. 3.
Chapter 3. Ashraddhana purushah dharmasyasya parantap aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani.
Guru, if you could read the verse.
Verse 3, O Parantapa, men devoid of shraddha, faith in the dharma, supreme knowledge, without attaining me, return to the path of the mortal world.
So regularly find throughout scripture, and especially here, Arjuna and Krishna often use proper nouns. And proper nouns, O Parantapa, so scorcher of foes. So he's referring to Arjuna, scorcher of foes, that's how grand you are. So as we know and remember, pronouns, as we know in our own lives, how many people who you really care about, oh, you're so, you call them different names. You might not let anybody else know what you call them, but the person close and you love so much, call them all sweet names. So when there's a teacher and when you're learning this knowledge, there's got to be a nice rapport, a loving, caring rapport. That affection enables the transmission of knowledge smoothly. So even if some things, in our prayer, we say Om Sanava, we say, let's not be disputatious, because it's got to be smooth. Let's be brilliant. They're just free. Our studies become brilliant. And that happens. Let's enjoy. That happens when the smooth translation, transmission of knowledge is when there's that care, that love, that warmth, that affection on both sides. So, O Parantapa, men devoid of shraddha, that capacity, that translated as faith in English and means much, much more. because there's a consistency of purpose. There's a belief in something that you do not know until you get there. But there's an inkling, there's an intelligent projection of collecting all that information to think, yes, this is what I should be heading on, this path. You're not blind. You've intelligently assessed it with your intellect. And then you put in a consistency of purpose to that ideal, to reach it. And you don't stop till you get there. That's shraddha. Instead of playing the mad game of samsara, that cycle of change, birth and death. So what happens in our life? We're born. What happens after we're born? Anybody? What's our general line of the way we go from birth to death? We're born, and then what happens? Anybody want to follow it?
We grow.
We grow, we walk, then when we walk, we become that little toddler, then we go to kindergarten, then from there we go to school, then from there we go to college, uni, we get a job, we get a wife, a husband, children, then we die. That's the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Lineage of what happens in birth and punarapi janaram. We keep birth and death, keeps going. So we should at some point question what we are doing, not just blindly go with that blind faith. Question, have that shraddha, not just have that mechanical living, but question, reason. Don't let your, Shakespeare says, men have lost their reason. And then Julia Caesar says it. Judgment thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. So you've got to question, reason, have shraddha then, not constantly distracted in one's acquisition for enjoyment. Let that get crushed. Have your focus on a bigger ideal, consistency of purpose. So, O Parantapa, men devoid of shraddha, faith, in this world, in this dharma, supreme knowledge, without attaining me, return back. So, mrityu samsara. So, to get out of that samsara, that cycle of birth and death, the mundane living, got to gain a certain objectivity. So in order to gain a certain objectivity, you've got to have a certain standardized life, a schedule of what you do every day. In the morning, your study, reflection, a bit of exercise, yoga. Have a discipline. What do you eat? What do you do in your work? Where's your mind's focus? There's a discipline, how much you eat, what time you sleep, how you do everything, how you take care of your body, mind, and intellect. It's a spiritual discipline. It's consistent. When one's established in one's spiritual evolution, that becomes consistent. So your thoughts are arrested on higher, that God, that thought of self, Atman Brahman. But mrityu samsara is when your thoughts are on constant change. The moment you can arrest your thought, it's said in the Upanishad, you become that self. It's between two thoughts. But we can't arrest the thoughts, so we can't see the self. So we've got to practice thoughts off the body, mind, intellect, world, thoughts on to something, the backdrop of that self. We don't see the change when we're involved in it, but when we step out, we can see the bigger canvas. We don't see our photo, we don't see ourselves change anyway. We still think we're that, we know we've changed. But unless you look at a photograph of when you were 2 years old to now, then you know you've changed. Otherwise, we don't actually, we just go through it very fast. So we've got to get to that changeless factor in order to recognize this change, to get out of this samsara. So, scorcher of foes. So we've got to get off this samsara. We've got to use that knowledge. Otherwise, one returns into that chain of that. You maintain yourself, we're maintaining ourselves in that cycle of birth and death. Change. With our own duties, our own responsibilities, we make those Frankensteins of it all. So life becomes monotonous of worry and anxiety. In the Puranas, there's many parables. One of them is to be like a lotus leaf. Lotus, not leaf, plant, a lily in water. Padmapatra Rahamsi, be a lotus leaf in water. So you're very much in the world. You have a passion in the world. You pursue your purpose. But at the back of your mind, you're very much objective. You have a dispassion. So you have a dispassionate passion. In one of the, like when you see a visual of Shiva, you sometimes see any of the deities have some indication that Shiva has one eye open, one eye closed, one eye open. So it's indicative of one aspect is in the world and one aspect is out of the world. So we've got to get out of the world, but we pursue the world to get out of the world. But without shraddha, that focus on the self, one returns to the mortal path. Yes, we do. Right at the end.
Parantapa means scorcher of foes. Arjuna acquired this name because of his outstanding qualities as a warrior. His foes dreaded the very name Arjuna. In the first 2 verses, Krishna offers to impart to Arjuna the supreme knowledge of self. Herein, he dwells on the importance of shraddha, faith, in the pursuit of self-knowledge. Shraddha, though translated as faith, carries a deeper import. Shraddha envisages not only your mind's deep devotion to the self, but also your intellect's careful reflection and absorption of the knowledge of self until you become one with the self. With the absolute knowledge, you become the immortal, eternal being. But those who lack shraddha will never reach the self. They will return to the cycle of birth and death in this mundane world. Mrityu samsara means the mortal world. The mortal world signifies the cycle of birth and death. Birth and death follow one after the other endlessly. There can be no birth without death, nor death without birth. When childhood dies, adolescence is born. When adolescence dies, adulthood is born. Adulthood yields to old age, and old age to reincarnation. The cycle continues. Thus, people become enmeshed in this mortal world of birth and death. However, the wise who pursue and realize the Supreme Self end the cycle. They attain immortality.
So that's the focus, to get out of that mrityu samsara. Gotta have shraddha. Let's go there next week. Hari Om.